What the hell? How long do I have to keep doing this?
Lydia Ivanchi, once a successful young lady from a marquise family, was now nothing more than a convict in a labor camp.
If anyone were to ask about me, they would all answer like this. A crazy woman who ruined her fate because she went crazy over a man. Yeah, I was crazy about him. So crazy, I couldn't even tell fire from water. Richard, who I laughably adored to death, is the reason I ended up like this. There's no bigger idiot than me. Falling head over heels just because he comforted me when I was crying. Richard was the third prince, born of a commoner mother who was being kept in check by the crown prince. He was the worst marriage candidate. But as stupid as I was, I trusted my family's power and proposed to him. By getting engaged to me, Richard survived the imperial power struggle. And when the crown prince ascended the throne and committed tyranny, he was able to raise a rebellion and eventually became emperor. And then he fell for my cousin Giselle and abandoned me. If they had only fallen for each other, I wouldn't have said anything. But those crazies even did it too. Blinded by love, I planned to kill Giselle. I thought her death would be the greatest pain for Richard, but the poisoning attempt failed. And the result is, well, how I got here. I should have killed that bastard Richard back then. Working like this, I'm scared I'll ruin my health.
Lydia stared at the blood she coughed up.
Oh, seriously? My cursed fate. It's been 5 years since I came to the labor camp, and I eventually caught an epidemic.
Lydia's life with Richard flashed before her eyes, and she wasn't pleased.
Stop it! If only I could return to that moment. I'd smack that idiot right across his face!
Lydia Ivanchi,
What is it?
we received a report that you smuggled in poison. You tried to poison Giselle, didn't you?
Poison? What?
She was at a loss, finding the vial in her hand.
This is poison, right? Did I seriously return to the past? And to the very day I was arrested for attempted poisoning? Why? If I were to return, couldn't it have been at least before poisoning her?
Now you won't even answer me. Hurry, conduct a body search.
Wait a moment. We cannot let men perform a body search on a lady. I will check her myself.
Oh, Giselle, I know your heart, but it's dangerous, so stay behind me.
Disgusting. I doubt I came back to witness this nonsense again. But since I've been given a chance to correct the past...
Lydia, what on earth are you?
Now I finally come to my senses. From now on, I will never ruin my life over a man again. When you like this video and subscribe to the channel.
Thanks. I'll take it from here. Because here on my Shoujo Weekly, you'll never have to ruin your life over real men again. I've got hours and hours of stories for you to ruin your life over fictional men instead. Looking for more Manhwa ones? Check out my Manhwa playlist. Looking for completed series in general? Well, I've got the completed series playlist, so come on. You can make all the bad thoughts go away. Just play and watch my videos all day. She knew if they searched her body, they'd find the poison sooner or later. She began to tear up, telling them they were misunderstanding. The poison was for ending herself. Everyone in the room gasped. Self-harm wasn't a crime. Lydia figured since she was already rumored to be obsessed with men anyway, she'd just go with the story that she committed self-end because her fiancé was stolen. And if she died, Richard would be in trouble. The question would be, how could he let his ex-fiancée die? He practically gained his position thanks to the Marquis's daughter. How would he face Marquis Ivanchi? Public sentiment would plummet. Going to pour the vial in her mouth, the guards rushed to stop her immediately. But it would spill, and she accidentally swallowed a little. A man with black hair would enter scene, and somehow, catching eyes with Lydia, as she collapsed, he uttered his name, Arsene. He caught her before she fell, and what he wasn't expecting to hear her say was the surname, Bayern. His subordinates were calling for him, but all he could think about was how she knew his original family name. His men couldn't believe she called him by name, and were now questioning if the two of them had been in love behind their backs. He was glad no one heard Bayern. Now all the maids could talk about was how the Marquise's daughter looked at Sir Arsene with affection while attempting to self-end, and how she called his name when she collapsed. There were even rumors that the two were secretly lovers, and that maybe that was the reason Sir Arsene had never shown any interest in women until now. Arsene Edis captain of the Black Wolf Knights and the Empire's strongest knight. He was the greatest contributor to Richard's successful rebellion. As the rumors spread like wildfire, he was at the Ivanchi Marquisate, sitting bedside in Lydia's room. He wanted to avoid attention, but it couldn't be helped, because figuring out why she said Bayern and eliminating the possible threat was more important. Bayern was the ducal house executed for treason, and his true surname, something he could never let see the light of day. Lydia groaned in her sleep. She was too cold. Arsène was nervous, wondering why the people of this house weren't taking care of her. He stoked the fireplace, and hand on his head, he couldn't believe he was the one nursing her now. Waking up to the warmth of the fire, Lydia groaned that she was thirsty. She was surprised to find Arsène in her room, taking care of her, drinking the water he brought. She was relieved she didn't die, but was now fired up to live properly this time. First rule for new life: never, ever go crazy over men. She also needed allies around her. Plan number 1, save the people from labor camp, because she still needed to take revenge on Richard and Giselle. Plan number 2, sock Richard in the face. To achieve this, she needed Sir Arsène. His benefactor is at the labor camp, so if she persuaded him properly, he'd definitely help. And if he refused, she'd negotiate using the secret she knew. He brought up her referring to him as Bayern, and she was at a loss. She straight up told him the reason she knew was because she died, and now had returned to the past. She learned of his true identity in her previous life. Arsène was stunned. He thought maybe she hadn't fully recovered yet, and perhaps he better visit again in a few days. She sounded crazy. She shrieked for him to wait. What she was saying wasn't the rambling of an invalid. She knew where Byron and Nella were. He stopped, turning back towards her. He felt compelled to listen as she mentioned his riding tutor and nanny. She explained in her past life, she was in an Eastern labor camp together with them. They said they had been captured on charges of helping Arsène and his mother escape. Lydia was desperate to save Byron, Nella, and Maria, her benefactors who helped her endure 5 years in labor camp. After getting betrayed by her fiancé and abandoned by her family, these were the ones who reached out to help her while she suffered from forced labor. At the time, she couldn't believe she was going to rot there for the rest of her life, while that cheating bastard became emperor. Thanks to her, was happy outside. Nella had stuffed bread in her mouth to help her calm her tears, scolding Lydia that slave labor was at least better than death. Maria comforted her, telling Lydia to forget that kind of man and pull herself together. She thought ruminating over someone who was already gone had no meaning. People shared their meals with Lydia, helped her with work, and smiled at her. She wanted to definitely save them from there. This time, they decided to attempt an escape in their 5th year. But that winter, everyone died from an epidemic. She told Arsène to send someone to the east to verify, if he found her words hard to believe, because there, they'd find a hidden magic stone mine. She thought that'd be enough to make him believe, but as one would expect, he instead empathized that the shock of marriage annulment must be great. She continued her attempt to explain, but he got up quickly and escaped. No matter how he thought about it, Lydia must be crazy. But she knew quite a bit of detail about Nella and Byron. He sighed, feeling like he was being swayed by nonsense, but decided to investigate just in case. Meanwhile, Devon, Lydia's brother, was annoyed that Arsène refused to have a meal with him and left. He asked his butler's opinion, who responded it was certain Sir Arsène had feelings for Lydia. He could tell by the way Arsène looked at Lydia while he carried her in his arms. He believed by any measure, that was the expression of a man worried about a woman he adored. Devon smirked, originally thinking about leaving Lydia to die, since she disgraced the family. Who would have thought his fool of a sister would manage to hook Arsène? He ordered the butler to put Lydia under house arrest and take good care of her. He had to make sure she looked good for the captain of the Black Knights. A week passed since the event. During that time, she recovered her health while devising countermeasures for various scenarios. Her biggest problem was there had been no contact from Arsène. She decided to meet with her brother to ask him to lift her house arrest, and he'd present her a paper drafted by the Emperor. Since now their engagement was annulled, she'd be matching with Count Mond. She began shaking. She couldn't believe they wanted her to match with a grandfather who already had children. He'd scoff at her, saying if she didn't want to marry this old man, she better make sure to secure Arsène. Lydia was blood vessel bursting angry. She stormed out of the room, figuring that was why Devon was being so nice to her. He was scheming to get to Arsène through her. She already anticipated this might happen, but actually experiencing it made her infuriated. If everyone kept shaking her with marriage, then she was going to become someone who couldn't get married and leave with Sir Arsene. That would be the best way to screw both her brother and the Emperor over. She'd now switch to Plan D, the path of a priestess. This is a path often chosen by nobles who've caused social scandals. The moment you become a priest, you can't even employ servants, and due to the vow of chastity, you can't date either. But Lydia didn't care at all. She learned all kinds of odd jobs while working at the labor camp anyway. Besides, she was already planning to live chastely, even without taking the vow. Dating? Well, thanks to her ex, she was sick of it. She began her escape, tossing out her tied-up sheets to leave through the window. Meanwhile, Arsene was sneaking through the Marquis's family garden, knowing if he got caught, things would only get worse. But if he visited formally, it'd cause an uproar, so he had no choice. After sending someone to the eastern region, he received a report that there really was a labor camp there. He felt he needed to get a proper explanation, and stopped, stun-locked, seeing Lydia climbing down from the upper floor of her room. She was struggling. She thought she worked hard enough at the labor camp to be able to climb down one floor, but forgot this body wasn't the one that worked at the labor camp. Arsene asked if she was alright, but then seeing she was slipping, he told her to jump down, and he'd catch her. Falling right into his arms, he thought she was really light. He wondered if Devon actually starved her. While collecting his thoughts, she asked to be put on the ground, because her nightgown was coming off. He hesitated briefly, and somehow took this as her asking him to pull down her skirt himself, his hands brushing against her bare skin. It was a little too much for her heart. The maids would come looking for her, and Arsene ran off with Lydia in his arms. And afterwards, when he put her down, he only then realized that's what she meant earlier. Buddy. He knelt down, telling her to get on his back. He could tell she was trying to leave the mansion. With her riding on him, she couldn't believe the inhuman speed he was moving at, or the fact he was able to climb over the wall while carrying her. Reaching the top, he said, "My lady, I trust you won't scream in this situation." She wondered why, but soon learned it was because he had already decided to jump down from the top of the wall. Getting on his horse, she asked to be dropped off at the temple, but he wasn't going to do that. He'd never let go of anyone who knew his secret. On his mother's deathbed, these were her dying words. "Son, you must hide your true identity. Trust no one." When he turned 9, Arsene's family was falsely accused of treason by the late emperor. He lost his father and grandfather. Only a few household members survived. Even then, they lost Byron, his tutor, and Nella, his nanny. While fleeing, they sought refuge in the borderlands of the Marquisate, where his father's close friend, Brahmin Edis, lived. And so, when his mother passed, he became Arsene Edis. Lydia asked Arsene if he was kidnapping her, and with him answering nonchalantly that he was, she was at a loss, seeing herself restrained within a comfortable blanket. Arsene told her he'd kill her if necessary. Judging by his reaction, she could already tell he must have found the labor camp. She thought it was wonderful, and was confident he'd still need her if he wanted to land on the border of the Marquisate. At first, he didn't understand. The land was already promised to him by Devon and the Emperor, but she'd point out his surprising naivete, asking why he thought someone who would toss aside his own fiancée would keep a promise. In Lydia's past life, Arsene never obtained that land, not even by the time she died. And once her brother found out he wanted the land, he'd never give it away freely. Devon wanted to keep Arsene under him. If Arsene married her though, it'd probably be given as a dowry. Seeing his cold reaction, she told him not to worry though, since she didn't plan on asking him to marry her. She wanted quid pro quo. She told him she'd help by first curing her father's incurable illness to bring him on their side. Ever since he got sick, Devon has taken control. Arsene questioned how she'd cure him, and she answered it was a trade secret, a product of her future knowledge. He was a little nervous, seeing she clearly had no intention of honestly explaining how she knew his identity. But her words did make sense. The current emperor shared the blood of the late emperor, so trusting him easily was impossible. Clinging to an indefinite promise of land was foolish. The problem is, he couldn't trust Lydia either. He agreed, seeing as he had no better options, and she told him they'd rescue the people from the labor camp first, then head to the border of the Marquisate. But before all that, she wanted to visit the temple. While not being the type to confess her sins, she did plan on becoming a priest. She extended her hand as a gesture of goodwill that she'd be counting on him, but he responded by wrapping her with a blanket. He wanted her to think about what she was wearing in front of him. With innocence, she knew she was clearly wearing pajamas, and he continued to look away. He told her to sleep here for now, and she got nervous. He wanted her to sleep in his room? She tried to offer herself to sleep in the guest room, but he laid her down because there was no guest room. That's when she'd look at him and ask if they were sleeping together. He couldn't believe she was really asking that right now, and she panicked, going, "No, that's not what I meant," and was sure of course nothing would happen. She didn't think he'd do anything to her. He leaned over, telling her she needed to develop a bit more caution. He could tell in her eyes he didn't even appear as a man, but he should, because how could she be so sure he didn't harbor impure intentions towards her? She got flustered and looked away, mumbling under the sheets that Richard said there's no man in the world who would want to get involved with a woman like her. Arsène was stunned yet again, thinking what the hell did the Emperor say to his fiancée? The room gained a depressing air as he apologized. He tried his best to leave quickly, but Lydia's stomach started growling. She flipped over, trying to hide her embarrassment, thinking Arsène was such a gentleman. Surely he'd pretend he didn't hear. However, he'd come back to bring her a delicious breakfast. He observed her blushing happily while she ate. Of course, he was still under the impression her family didn't feed her. The way she munched, he uttered that she was like a rabbit. A winter rabbit, more specifically. It was an animal with pink fur, often found in the northern borderland forests. Lydia imagined them to be very cute. She asked if they could be raised, but Arsène didn't think she could raise one. At the palace, Giselle was happy to hear her baby was coming along healthy. She noticed Richard staring off with an annoyed look, and when she asked what was wrong, she wasn't expecting to hear that Arsène and Lydia's relationship was bothering him. She asked if he still had feelings for Lydia, but he assured her that wasn't the case, and that instead, what he wanted was Arsène and his Black Wolf Knights. He wanted to tie Arsène down to the capital somehow, but if the two got married, it'd become a problem for him. To this, Giselle offered to pay a visit to the Avanci estate. The next day, Lydia woke up to someone knocking at her door and was surprised to see a man staring at her angrily. He shoved fresh clothes at her and with a disgruntled attitude told her she was wanted outside. She was taken aback hearing him tell her that the captain wasn't a suitable match for her, and if she was thinking of trying something, she'd better give up. She didn't understand what was with this guy. Her rage meter was building. She tried asking what his name was, but he thought even if he told her, she'd just forget it right away, and that hearing the name of lowly trash would just dirty her ears. This only made her more mad. The next day, Lydia graced herself before the high priest at the temple, saying, as a faithful servant of goddess Anastis, she's come here to dedicate her life to her. The priest started getting nervous, as Lydia told him that the goddess made her realize the futility of her life and guided her here. He smiled at her, thinking if they made her a priest though, surely it'd hurt the temple's image. But then she'd offer a huge diamond, and the priest took it right away. There's no way the temple could neglect even the smallest token of sincerity. He then asked if she brought a witness of high enough standing, and Lydia told him not to worry. Her witness would be the future empress, Giselle. Last night, Lydia asked Arsène to send her letter to Ellis of Baron Melbourne's estate. The letter contained a request for Giselle to come to the central temple the morning after. She was confident Giselle would come, because she also wanted to be registered under House Givenchy. Even though she was Lydia's cousin, in quotation marks, she was practically a distant orphan, no different from a commoner. Richard had an inferiority complex due to being born to a commoner mother, and with Lydia's father out at the moment, Lydia was a key in approving Giselle's registry to the family. The two made pleasant, unpleasant small talk. You know, the kind I've learned that girls do, like backhanded compliments towards each other. Giselle was also here to scout and make sure there was nothing going on between Lydia and Arsène. The priestess appointment ceremony ended smoothly under the oversight of the high priest. However, Devon would freak out over Lydia becoming a priestess. His face was going red with anger, until she said she was going with Sir Arsène to the outskirts of the marquisate to build a temple there. Hearing Arsène agreed to accompany her, Devon wondered if Lydia had no feelings, but he did, and then quickly told him he had no reason to oppose. He knew she could always quit priesthood later, as long as the two fell for each other. That was enough. Once they suffered through the harsh frontier together, he was sure Lydia would come to rely on the strongest knight in the empire. Devin turned towards his sister again, telling her not to even think about taking anything from the mansion with her, since priestesses must live cleanly, except for maybe a few clothes. This caused her to shake in anger. Later, while having tea with Arsene, Devin asked when he and Lydia became so close. Arsene answered very politely, to the point Devin thought he was overly stiff. Arsene could see the way Devin behaved. It was like he was trying to sell off his own sister. He knew Devin was always ambitious, since they fought alongside the current emperor during the coup, but could now see he was also wicked, and likely he'd never hand over the borderlands. Devin was the kind of man who would break promises if it served his own greed. At night, Lydia would raid her father's secret vault. She noticed something Devin had hidden in her father's room, and couldn't believe she'd find a coffin for her father, who was perfectly alive, staying with the main lord at the moment. She thought Devin was a lunatic. Their father was still fighting for his life. Even though their father wasn't a good husband, he was still a decent parent. He valued family above all else. When he heard she proposed to the third prince, and that Devin supported the rebellion, he supported them immediately. She eventually found the stash of diamonds her father mentioned. He told her to use them if she ever needed to. He must have known she went broke after selling everything she owned to support Richard. Pulling out a needle for her clothes, she vowed to save her father someday. Hearing Arsene was taking off to the country without even attending his wedding, Richard felt a little hurt. He warned Arsene to be wary of Lydia. Since he had just ascended the throne, Devin was still much more powerful. Arsene told him he was misunderstanding. He had no relationship with Lydia, nor did he intend to. This made Richard scoff, responding, "That's right. There's no reason for him to have interest in damaged goods." Arsene thought Richard was being too harsh about his former fiancée. He wondered why everyone treated her so poorly. 2 days later, he'd find Lydia looking somewhat tired. He assumed Devin mistreated her again, but before they could take off, Devin needed her signature to approve Giselle's adoption, and while it irritated her, she took care of it right away. He then decided to go through her large luggage bag and just dumped it open. Unbelievably rude. She couldn't believe he'd exposed her underwear in front of a guest. Seeing her hurt expression, he assumed she might have hidden something in her bag, but she really only packed clothes. He'd let her go, smirking like he'd done nothing wrong. Man, I know she's angry and all, but guys, that bag is really big. She continued to pout on her carriage ride out. When Arsene asked if it'd be better for her to just put the bag down, she told him no, because it had really expensive underwear. It was covered in diamonds. She fully expected a luggage inspection. Luckily, she became a god of sewing while slaving away in the labor camps. They never imagined she'd rip open the underwear and embroider diamonds into the lining. With Arsene asking how expensive underwear could possibly be, she teased, asking if he wanted to see, and he turned away blushing, going, "Ahem, I am not a pervert. Please refrain from lewd jokes and act like a priestess, my lady." She thought he was so uptight. After arriving at the inn, Arsene introduced Lydia to Milan. They'd be disguising themselves as members of Milan's merchant group to enter the Count's territory where the labor camp was. She'd also meet Cedric and Randall, the guy who was rude to her last time. She laughed joyously, telling herself to endure her beef with him for the time being. But the stoking of her anger only seemed to increase. Before arriving at their destination, Randall would pick fights with her for no reason and give her dirty looks. Cedric would do his best to intervene on behalf of his fellow knight. Arsene wondered if something happened between her and Randall, but she had no clue why Randall was acting like his dad. She'd at first joked that maybe the two of them were dating, and then it hit her. She brought up that Arsene was quite handsome. It was strange how a person with such a handsome face didn't have a single scandal under his name. She thought many women in the capital must have tried something, and now she was thinking maybe Randall pushed all those women away. She thought maybe the two of them had that kind of relationship, and he responded absolutely not. At the inn near the Eastern labor camp, Cedric apologized on behalf of Randall to Lydia and explained that most of the knights in the order were from mercenary or commoner backgrounds. They received their knighthood from their merit in successfully executing the counter-coup, except for Randall. He was a former slave. Even though he received his knighthood, he did not receive a family name. Lydia didn't remember, But Cedric actually once recommended Randall to be her escort knight, and she responded, "How could a slave be a knight?" It hit her. This was back when she was extremely aristocratic in a negative sense. She remembered just how condescending she was back then, being filled with arrogance, knowing she was marrying Richard and soon becoming royalty. She told Cedric then to bring her a proper knight instead. She had the nerve to get annoyed, without remembering she hurt Randall first. She wondered if that was why she was brought back to this life. Was it so she could live properly this time? Heading to apologize, Aren would stop her because the clouds have covered the moon. This was the perfect time for them to sneak into the labor camp. At the camp, Maria was resting on the ground. She moaned, praying to the goddess for a loaf of bread coated in lots of sugar. Nella tried to offer her day's bread. Maria was a pregnant woman after all. But Maria assured her it was fine, that she was just joking and she'd be going to sleep now. Lying in bed, she thought about how her baby would grow up without even a decent meal, and that made her feel guilty. She'd later wake up to Lydia calling her name and the smell of bread. Rubbing her eyes, she came across the woman she hadn't met in this timeline, shushing her and offering a loaf covered in sugar. Then offered her hand, taking her away. Having collected everyone, they got startled by some rustling in the bushes. Lydia saw it was Grandpa Robert. Everyone felt relief. He could see they were trying to escape and told them not to get caught and go safely. Lydia offered for him to come with them, and despite Aren objecting, she assured bringing Robert would be helpful since he was a mining expert. Riding back into the morning, Lydia told Aren her bottom was sore from riding the horse so long. He told her to refrain from indecent remarks, and she began to pout. It's not like she asked him to apply ointment on it. She pointed out he referred to her with the wrong title again. Becoming a priestess, she was no longer a noblewoman, so my lady was improper. He thought she didn't feel much like a priest, so her new title didn't come to him naturally. He uttered her name, and she went wide-eyed, while he went embarrassed. Things were getting a little spicy on this horse ride. He thought of her continual rambling about how she knew Robert from her past life. Investigating her background, nothing came up. The report only confirmed she lived her entire life in the capital, except for the marquisate, and had no connection to the ducal house of Bayern. Logically, it made no sense for her to know Byron or Nella. He questioned how a lie could be so elaborate, but just as she said, there was a labor camp in the eastern county and the people he'd been searching for. The only thing that made sense was her dying and coming back to life, with her telling him if he discovered the abandoned mine was actually filled with magic stones like she said, and that she wanted a big share of it. He asked what she planned to do with all that money. She answered that once her revenge was over, she was going to leave for a warm island in the south. She hated the winters here. He supposed if she had really been in the labor camp, hating winter would make sense. He then asked if she actually hated the empire itself, and she smiled, saying that was true too. Suddenly, the thought came to his mind that she was someone who didn't suit the winter. Everyone caught up over a meal at the inn. Arsène's tutor and nanny were so glad to see him again, but they wanted to know more about the priestess they had never seen before, especially Maria, who had no relation to the ducal house of Bayern. Lydia was getting nervous. She told Arsène the truth, but didn't want to tell these people. She felt no need for them to know she suffered horribly in her previous life and eventually died of disease. She answered warmly that while they wouldn't remember, she owed them a great debt. Then, she made a personal request for Robert to oversee the development at the abandoned mines. He was shocked. He thought they were going to help him, but now they wanted him to work at another mine? After some time, Lydia spotted Randall getting out for some fresh air. She followed after, and he was surprised to hear her apologizing to him. He began to sweat, asking why she was apologizing, even when she didn't need his forgiveness. With sincerity, she responded that she just wanted to tell him she'd never make that mistake again. As he took off, we see Arsène had been listening in the whole time. He was ready to break them up if things got rough. He thought of the whole interaction as strange, since in the past, she would have never apologized, and more likely slapped Randall and gotten angry. The more he thought about it, everything's been strange since he got involved with Lydia. He smiled, figuring whatever the case may be, she was no longer the arrogant and authoritative Lydia Ivanchi of the past. While his companions were having a tea party, Lydia would ask him why he was just standing there and pull him in. He woke up, wondering what kind of dream that was. I'll tell you what. Ooh, you thinking about her? Yup, I know what that is. When he got up, he found Byron and Nella hadn't slept. They were so happy they were free. He really thought this was a dream. People he thought he'd never see again were alive right before his eyes. If Lydia hadn't told him, he might have never found them. Pondering if he had remembered to thank her, he'd jolt, seeing her rubbing her eyes from behind him. The more he looked, the more he thought of her as a cute rabbit. He'd been staring so long, she thought something was on her face. That's when he'd finally thank her. She was taken aback and got super red. It was too early to thank her. They hadn't even escaped yet. She told him it was time to leave quickly, but when he asked if she was going out in her pajamas, she stormed off pouty as she went to change. She couldn't believe he was teasing her. And just like that, they escaped the Count's territory, disguised as employees of Milan's merchant group, with the escapees sitting cramped in the cargo boxes. Knowing Milan was going to bribe the soldiers at the checkpoint, Lydia added in 2 gold buttons because she wanted additional information from them. These buttons were torn from Devon's jacket, engraved with the Avanci family crest. Once handed over as a bribe, it would circulate within the Count's territory. Lydia was curious about what would happen when the Count learned of it. Not even Richard knew there was an illegal camp here, so she wanted to know how she ended up getting dragged there in her past life. She questioned if her brother was involved. Speaking of him, he was losing his mind over Richard. News of Lydia becoming a priestess spread throughout the capital. The source of the rumors was the Imperial Palace. So in his mind, the Emperor obviously spread it himself. Devon couldn't deny the rumors since they weren't false. But it wasn't time for him to antagonize the Emperor yet. He called for the butler, telling him to send word to Giselle to visit the Marquisate soon. Giselle told him not to worry, because Lydia could renounce her priestess title at any time. She then asked if he still had no intentions of marrying. Trying to play coy, she mentioned she was officially a part of the Avanci family now, and was worried the family line might end. She heard he was troubled and unable to forget his first love. He smirked, figuring she wanted something other than his family name, and asked what she wanted. He was stunned to hear that if he still remained unmarried and she had a second child, she was asking him to adopt them. This was a favorable ace in the hole for him. If he adopted a prince, Richard wouldn't be able to cast aside the Avanci family so easily. Exhausted from all the travel, Giselle would trip over, and who was there to catch her? Sir Randall. He bowed silently and quickly left. Arsène would clench his fist, thinking he wanted to be the one to catch her, but then wondered why he would think that. Staring at Lydia feeling her back, he wondered if her back hurt. She mentioned her bottom hurting last time. That's when Byron would grab him by the shoulder, telling Arsène he understood he was at an age where his blood ran hot, but he shouldn't stare at a woman's behind. Arsène told him he wasn't, but Byron didn't believe him, and supposed he must pray to the goddess to forgive the sins his master had committed today. Lydia would detour a small field before re-entering the Marquisate. There, she would find the cure for her father's illness, known as white ghost disease, a disease where one hallucinated seeing white ghosts, caused by drug poisoning from a medicinal herb widely used across the country. A cure was discovered while she was in labor camp in her past life. The accumulated toxins from the herb could be cured by flushing them out with Yellow Mountain dandelion roots. Arsène asked if she could really cure her father's illness using the special tea. She told him to just watch. 10 days later, her father woke up to her teary-eyed face, and she hugged him dearly. Now she could finally explain that Richard broke off their engagement to marry Giselle. Under her hysterical attitude, she had a devious smirk. She played woe is me while telling her father they had an affair, and Giselle was already pregnant. Her father's jaw dropped. He couldn't believe how insolent Richard was. His daughter risked annihilation of the Marquisate just to support the rebellion. He then asked about Devon, and Lydia explained that not only did he approve her marriage annulment, he also signed off Giselle's adoption papers and prepared his coffin in advance. With this, her father told the butler to ensure news of his recovery did not spread. He needed to confirm things for himself. The days went by peacefully, with Lydia and the rest of the gang. She was going to take Maria shopping for baby clothes. They even formed a small club, a club for people who had absolutely no luck with men. Anyone could join, so long as they vowed to never fall in love again. Arsène couldn't believe she was serious. Wouldn't it just be better if she improved her taste in men? She'd lean in close to him, because it looked like he had something to say. He'd sweat, stutter, and excuse himself by bringing up a messenger who left the Marquisate for the capital had returned. Lydia would walk in on her father discovering everything was true. He was pissed and wanted Giselle's adoption papers canceled immediately. He took in that orphan girl who should have lived as a servant and raised her like a noble. She stabbed him in the back. He was going to storm off to the capital and deal with Richard, who in his eyes was just some green, newly crowned emperor. He himself had more power. The next day, Lydia's father left for the capital, and since they had no more business at the Lord's castle, they prepared to depart for the frontier. Aren told her to ride in the carriage this time. The road to the frontier was dangerous. Since demonic beasts lived there, he likely said it as a warning. The 3 villages at the edge of the marquisate were commonly called the frontier. The land was barren, the nights long, and demonic beasts appeared frequently. For generations, the Edis family, retainers of the Avanshi marquisate, have been responsible for protecting the frontier in exchange for exemption of taxes and military service. That's why Aren was guarding the area now. Almost reaching their destination, Lydia thought there was no way a demonic beast would really show up, but would quickly get tossed in her carriage as the soldiers stood to battle against the monsters. Pulling Nella out of the carriage, Maria told her to hurry up. There was a beast right behind them. When Lydia looked back, she couldn't move. She thought she was going to die here. She closed her eyes, accepting her fate, but would then hear the sound of a single slash. Aren asked if she was okay. He promised to finish it quickly so they could get away. Lydia knew he was called the Empire's best sword, but seeing it in person, she now truly understood why Devon and Richard wanted him by their side so badly. 1 hour later, the girls washed off all the monster blood. They thought to wash their clothes next, but weren't expecting to come across the men washing off in the stream over. Maria would wave, telling them not to mind them. They were just going to do laundry. Lydia whispered to her they could just do laundry later, but Maria didn't see a problem. It's not like the men took everything off. Plus, they all had great bodies. She saw no problem in appreciating that. Lydia would shake Maria's head, telling her it was improper, but would stop to stare at Aren washing up. She was impressed. She thought he'd be more on the slender side, but his muscles made her feel some kind of way. Maria had to tease, telling the priestess she thought his muscles were nice too. Maria had to keep going, saying surely the goddess would allow just looking, making all the excuses in the world, like it's not like they were peeping. The men were in front of them. What could they do? And then hit her with, so who do you think has the best body, priestess? The two of them thought they were speaking quietly, but really, every knight could hear them, and they were listening very intently. After all, how often did unmarried knights get a chance to have their physiques acknowledged by a lady? They started to flex, as if telling the priestess to behold their magnificent muscles. But Aren thought they were focusing on the wrong things. Regardless, they were all waiting to hear Lydia's answer. What was her answer? Sir Cedric had the most beautiful body, and Maria agreed. The guys were shocked, except Cedric. He was feeling himself. Aren wondered if they really liked muscles like that, but then thought, if it really was Lydia's preference, why did she stare at his body for so long? The Emperor didn't have muscles like that. He figured preference and love must be different. He considered taking this time to tell Lydia to give up on the temple and come to the Edis mansion. Now that she's seen how dangerous magical beasts were, the mansion had resident knights, so it was safe and there would be servants to attend to her. He'd spot her and Cedric chatting, with him telling her the carriage was being repaired, so it'd be best for her to share a tent with their leader, Aren. Seeing her hesitation, Cedric questioned if she was worried that Aren might make inappropriate advances. But she wasn't worried at all. She saw him as so conservative, there was no way he'd engage in improper conduct. Cedric didn't know how she came to think that, claiming Aren was just blockheaded. Not expecting Aren to appear right behind him, Lydia thought the whole thing was funny, and after hearing that, she felt no hesitation about sharing a tent with him now. She asked why he was intentionally avoiding romance since he was so popular. She supposed it might be because of his secret, or was it because he couldn't perform like a man? The reason stems from her brother. Their mother, who had always been weak, cherished Devon, even until the day she died. She told Lydia to have 2 sons and give one to her brother because he could not have children. Because she loved her mother, Lydia kept that secret completely, but decided now to just tell Aren outright. They say it happened to Devon because he used the wrong medicine when he was young. Aren didn't particularly care and turned the conversation to ask Lydia if she really intended to stay at the temple. In the borderlands, monsters often came all the way down to the villages at least once a month, and there were many, far more vicious and enormous ones than they saw today. She pondered for a bit and answered, she'd just have to learn the sword. He couldn't believe this woman. After she fell asleep, Arsene could tell she was having a nightmare. It was about when Richard had first locked her up for attempting to poison Giselle. She pleaded for him not to leave her behind, but he did, telling her that sparing her from execution was the last mercy he could offer. When he walked away, she begged him not to go, but he never looked back once. Just like he spared her life, she was going to spare his, while making sure he'd never live comfortably again. Arsene heard her begging for Richard to stay in her sleep. He thought she hated Richard, but could see no matter how much she hated him, there was a corner of her heart that still had some love left. He wondered why he felt so much discomfort in his own heart. Whenever he was beside Lydia, these uncontrollable emotions kept flowing. Back at the Avanci estate, Devon was panicking, having heard his father was returning. He told his butler to remove the coffin and left to go greet his father personally. He came outside all bright and smiles, but his dad was not having it. Inside, his father would scold and berate him for adopting Giselle into the family. His father threw a pillow at him, saying his blind ambition was going to ruin their entire bloodline. 2 days later, the main party arrived safely at the frontier. Lydia questioned why the village was in such a terrible condition, considering no battles reached the frontier during the coup. Cedric explained half their knights deserted during, so they couldn't fend off the demonic beasts properly. But, since the captain has returned, they should be able to restore order. She could see Arsene was indispensable here. Randall would then escort her to the temple. It was so run down, she compared it to a storage shed. Randall kicked down the door for her, and when she thanked him, he turned away and quickly left. 1 week later, Arsene received a report about strangers roaming around, claiming to be wandering mercenaries, but seemed to be from the Emperor's faction. He told Cedric to ignore them for now, because they more importantly had to deal with his mountain of paperwork. But then, hearing that Randall had been helping Lydia this past week, even with the repairs of the temple, he quickly got up to go check on her. When he arrived, she'd ask if he was here to see Byron, who was now taking on the role of a priest. He noticed the temple looked pretty decent now. She brought up all the people that pitched in to help, including Sir Randall, who's been amazing with his hammering, sawing, and cleaning. She assumed Randall only did it because Arsene told him to, and that maybe Arsene was just too shy to brag. She thought he was such an innocent guy, and now wanted to ask him for a favor. She wanted permission to go to the forest, to pick some lily of the valley to plant in the temple courtyard. These were known as the goddess's symbolic flower. He told her it was too dangerous, but if she insisted, he'd accompany her. He offered his hand, and she took it. He definitely was a proper gentleman. She was in awe, seeing all the beautiful flowers, but would then begin to panic because she spotted a monster. He took notice and told her it was a winter rabbit. She couldn't believe he compared it to one. It wasn't cute like she thought at all. He explained these rabbits had thick, puffy coats, only in the winter. It was spring right now, but she didn't believe him. In any case though, it wasn't actually a monster, so she had nothing to worry about. The two would discuss the men calling themselves mercenaries, who came to look for her in particular. Knowing they were actually Imperial scouts sent by the Emperor, Arsene's goal was to drive them out soon. But Lydia warned him if he did it wrong, they might suspect he was hiding something here. If someone who remembered the Duke of Bayern's retainers showed up here, it'd be trouble. She proposed getting the scouts to leave of their own volition, by tossing out a scandal between the two of them. Something like her chasing him, but he's not interested. If Richard heard about it, he'd probably pity Arsene and stop paying attention to the frontier. Arsene asked what about the case Richard summoned Lydia to the capital to nip the rumor in the butt. She was confident he wouldn't, because if he did, people would assume he still had lingering feelings for the fiancée he threw away. Richard seized the throne through a coup, so his position was still unstable. Breaking off his engagement right after coronation damaged his image, especially since she was one of his most loyal supporters. He desperately needed public favor right now. Arsene accepted this gambit, on the condition this plan remained a secret between just the two of them. She thanked him for walking her back to the temple, but he couldn't act so kind anymore. She was supposed to be the one to chase him. She then thanked him for sending Randall to help her clean the temple. And now Arsene was coming on his own, using orders as an excuse. Arsene thought he should set the record straight, tell her it wasn't him, that Randall lied. But for some reason, he didn't feel like saying it. We turned to the day of Lydia's debutante ball. It was also the anniversary of her mother's death. She just kept thinking about her mother and couldn't bring herself to smile. And outside, where she went to let it all out, it was Prince Richard who found and consoled her. He empathized, telling her at times he also missed his deceased mother. Lydia wondered if that was the moment her heart was drawn to Richard. After that day, she frequented his palace. The relationship between the two was rumored through the mouths of servants who witnessed it, and then everything else that followed ensued. It wasn't a memory she was happy to recall, but she decided to draw from it to do something similar for Aren. The next day, when seeing him, he was disappointed. They were scammed by Count Juan's territory again. They were sold grain that would cost 1 gold coin for 10. Lydia would decide to deal with this, not as a priestess, but as a marquis's daughter. Arriving at Juan County, Lydia was in awe. She saw an inn on the shopping street, restaurants, and even farmland. They only crossed one river from the borderlands, but the living conditions here were totally different. With how nice the place looked, she thought Count Juan should be well known, so why hadn't she ever heard of him? She put that aside to instead head to the boutique. For a week, she'd be going back to being the notorious Marquise's daughter, Lydia, a spoiled girl who's selfish and stubborn. The plan was for her to flex money and spread rumors that she was still being supported by her family, pretend to be a clueless, spoiled girl, and intentionally get ripped off. By the time word spreads she was here, she'd cause a huge ruckus and drag out the scammer. In the boutique, as she was getting her measurements for new robes, Lydia really laid on the spoiled rich girl act. Aren was impressed. He'd make payment for her new clothes with a whole diamond, and starting the next day, every shopkeeper in the district began rushing to have Lydia buy from them. The plan was working, but Lydia was getting exhausted walking around so much. She fell to the ground, trying to execute her next part of the plan. She went, "My legs hurt so much. I'm exhausted. Sir, could you carry me?" Thinking Aren would refuse her with a stern face. She didn't expect him to suddenly pick her up and ask if she was tired. This wasn't what she planned at all. He'd eventually set her down and told her to rest comfortably. And so, she'd pull him into her room and have him against the door to tell him he put her in a difficult spot by ruining her plan. He was confused. Her face was so pale, he didn't know she was acting. She told him that didn't matter, and to push her away no matter what. Getting he might still get confused, she decided on a signal to let him know for sure she was acting. She showed him a wink, thinking if she did this, it'd look like she was seducing him in others' eyes too. He seemed pretty captivated by it, and while she continued to clamor about its effectiveness, he told her he didn't think it was a very good signal because he didn't feel like pushing her away. He chuckled, thinking about how she really resembled a rabbit. She thought on his smile. She'd never seen it before because he usually frowned, but then realizing the rabbit he was referring to was that weird-looking creature, she thought he was teasing her. She pushed him out of the room, reminding him the signal was her wink, and behind the closed door, she kept thinking about him comparing her to a rabbit. She was flustered, trying to convince herself there's no way he meant that in a cute way. On the third day, things were going as planned. A merchant was trying to rip Lydia off, charging her 8 gold coins for a box of potatoes, instead of the market price of 8 silver she had checked by Milan earlier. She dropped a potato, telling them she must look stupid in their eyes, and began making a scene. She demanded to see Count Juan immediately. The commotion at the market spread to the Lord's castle in no time. Hearing the news, the steward immediately sent Lydia a letter, inviting her to meet with him. She ripped it apart, telling the man if the steward wishes to meet, he needed to come see her. Since everyone was gathered, she thought this was the perfect opportunity. She turned towards Aren, while winking, telling him her body was hurting, and that she didn't think she'd be able to sleep much. With the other guys being clueless, they nudged at Aren to go give her a massage, and he picked her up again to carry her back to the room. She was freaking out. She asked if he saw her signal, and he did. He was going to massage her anyway. She couldn't believe what was happening. He nagged so much about her being in sleepwear, and now he was offering to massage her legs? He massaged her until she fell asleep. Reflecting on things, he had only meant to keep Lydia close to monitor her, but somewhere along the way, he's drifted from that purpose. Knowing his own situation, he didn't intend to take things further, but also, he didn't want things to end. The next day, Count Juan's steward was anxious, but promising to give Lydia whatever she wanted. The man always thought of himself as lucky, a mere noble with no title or land, that had become someone who controlled an entire county. He figured this spoiled young lady would calm down if he just coaxed her a bit, but could have never expected her to ask for his head on a platter. She knew he hadn't punished the merchants who tried to rip her off at all, and instead took bribes from them to to defer punishment. She used the opportunity to bring up merchants who were charging the borderlands outrageous prices for grains. She threatened to go to the capital to meet with the Count, who was staying there instead of maintaining his lands. By the end of it, everything worked out in Lydia's favor. She got the steward to donate grains to the borderlands via her temple, and got them to sell grains and now seedlings at a fair price. That way, the people in the borderlands could grow their own crops. The day after, all the merchants were offering Lydia their wares for free. Remembering the steward had told them their heads were on the line for upsetting her, Lydia didn't want to push the people this far into a corner, and offered to pay the proper price. Being given a second chance at life, she wanted to give others a chance to change as well. Well, that was the start to an okay series. What do you guys think? I thought the initial premise was pretty interesting. I am a fan of redemption stories, but I don't know. I feel like I need a bit more drama. Maybe things will pick up, because right now, it's caught up at 23 chapters. So, pretty short, but I wanted something to tide things over a bit before covering a longer series. Subscribe for more content, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.